Veteran lawyer Andy Savage has been in the news lately, from representing Michael Slager to the victims of the Mother Emanuel tragedy. In this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I speak exclusively with him one-on-one. Andy, it's so good to see you.
That's great to see you. You know, I knew you when
20 years ago.
you still had a 1 in front of your age,
That's right. Yes, sir. 12 years old at Channel 5 in 96.
Yeah, it was terrific. Yeah,
you
you've come a long way and really done well.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. You know, as we sit here right now, I mean, every night on Nightly News, I got to say, I've heard your name or seen your name all over the evening news. A couple of headlines I want to read to you. Scarlett Wilson responds to defense motion in Michael Slager case. Michael Slager to have first federal hearing since arraignment. Documents filed to seal evidence in Dylan Roof's federal trial. Attorneys want jury questionnaires in church shooting seal. As we sit here right now, can I ask you this? What is it like to be Andrew Savage these days?
Pretty busy. You know, I really love what I do. You know, you've known that for a long time. I love to practice the law. I love helping people. So these two cases have an unusual component of publicity. We've had our fair share of high-profile cases in the past, but these are so intense. You know, my affection for the Emanuel people predates what happened last June. I go back 30 years, maybe the same time, as far back as you and I go,
right.
With Felicia and Polly,
right.
Nadine.
Right.
Yeah, so, you know, that's sort of a searing case to me in terms of emotions and heart. I wasn't called by them because I'm an attorney. I was called by them because of my relationship with them, my friendship with them. And because of my background and what I do for a living, I was able to facilitate a lot of their questions about the system and trying to help them as much as I can. And of course, more recently, we brought a case against the FBI for the Charleston loophole. And have pretty much tried to help them in their fight to bring realistic gun safety back to America. So that's one side of the ledger. The other side is my relationship with Michael Slager, who's been, you know, really has become the doormat of the criminal justice system. A lot of people are very aggravated against him, but I have to tell you, Quintin, to a large extent, that is because of the way the law enforcement put out information about him. And of course, the departure of his previous attorney was all so negative and sort of fit into the national experience of white cops with young black males and the terrible situation we have in this country with the difficulty of law enforcement being in any way empathetic or a community being empathetic with the police obligations. So Slager's not a bad guy. And what happened that day, the full story hasn't been told. We intend to tell that story. We have been generally cajoling the media, and I particularly mean the Post and Courier, not just to tell the narrative that they tell, which is a false narrative. It's truthful, the facts are truthful, but the narrative is false. And if you notice their recent news articles, they're starting to make that turn, at least on occasion. But the narrative of white cop, well, that's pretty obvious. Yes, he is. He's white and he's a cop. And Mr. Scott was a black male. Oh, yes, that is true. There was a traffic stop. Yes, that's true. And it was a minor traffic stop. Yes, that's true, too. But then you get into Mr. Scott fleeing from a traffic stop. That's not the whole truth. And what the media has failed to do is to show the video that they all have of the vicious knockdown fight between Mr. Scott and Mr. Slager, where they were both actually on the ground, where you can see in the video that Mr. Scott took the aggressive position and actually got on top of Slager. And as Slager says, he took his taser away and then try to use his taser against Slager. And the narrative is that, well, we couldn't see that on the video, therefore it didn't happen. Well, you need to look at the video, and you need to see when the video had clarity and when it didn't have clarity. But even in those times where it did not have clarity, you can certainly tell the color of the clothes that they were wearing, and you can tell who was where and at what stage during the fight they were there. The law enforcement forgot about the DNA. You know, you always hear about DNA, right?
Right.
I mean, isn't that one of the things that the law enforcement, they stand up and they say, well, this perpetrator, we got his DNA. Well, we have DNA in this case. And Mr. Scott's DNA is all over the taser. Not only is it all over the taser, but it's the primary DNA on the taser. And we all know that Slager picked that taser up and holstered it, threw it down next to Mr. Scott, and then picked it back up and put it in his holster. And even after doing all that, the primary DNA on the taser is Mr. Scott's. So, yeah, what the media has been saying is truthful. Scott is black. Slager is white. Slager is a cop. There was a traffic stop. But they don't tell the full narrative. And I think that's very destructive, because the media has a responsibility to tell the public the facts and then let the public interpret those facts. But what we have here is a combination of law enforcement and the media editorializing before the public had a chance to make up its own mind.
June 17th, 2015. That was a hot, humid day here in Charleston, and ultimately turned into tragedy that night. I was at home, laying on my bed, actually watching the news on Twitter when it came down, and we all know what happened thereafter. I'm wondering, where were you when you got the news? And when you got the news, what was going to your mind?
You know, Quintin, last June I was undergoing some medical concerns, and I was at home, asleep, when that happened. And I was awoken the next morning by one of the survivors. Felicia Sanders called me, and I got to tell you, it was emotionally devastating to me, because I could feel in her voice the panic, the sorrow, the horror. I don't even remember what she said to me, other than, you know, she told me it was terrible, and I really, in my mind, I don't have clarity on the things she said. All I know is I said, Felicia, I'll be right over. And I left immediately, and for basically the next 2 or 3 weeks, I was side by side with her, getting through the trauma and the emotion of the moment.
You are juggling so many cases, from Michael Slager to the Mother Emanuel tragedy that it is. Tell me, when did you realize that these two cases, because I know you've done law for what, almost 40 years now, are these the two biggest cases in your career, in your mind?
Well, you know, I've always said the biggest case you have is the one that your client is interested in. So whether you have what some people might see as a minor case, a traffic type offense, or a minor misdemeanor offense, or a minor accident, to that individual, that's the biggest case they have. So I try not to categorize my cases, because they're really not my cases, they're my client's cases.
Okay.
And to a client, every case is important, and to a client, their case is the most important case. So I don't try to look at it through the prism of my own eyes. What do I spend my most time on, or whatever that criteria would be, because that's my criteria. Truth is, it's the client's case that I am helping them with, and every one of their cases is the most important case I have.
Wow. So what's next for you? Obviously, we know that the two big trials are coming up soon. But what's next for Andy Savage?
It's bad news, I think, on the trials. I mean, I cannot believe the schedule, Quintin. I mean, you're a guy that follows schedules, and timeliness is important to you, and justifying which place you're going to be at which time. And can you believe that the Slager trial in state court starting on the 31st of October, and the Emanuel case is starting on the 6th of November. I don't have any input in that. The solicitor and the judges are the ones, the prosecutor and the judges are the ones that control when a case is called. But I have to tell you, I was hugely disappointed in the decision to try both of them at the same time. My obligation, obviously, is to Michael Slager in the criminal case, but my obligation is just as much, even though I'm not the attorney of record in the Emanuel case, my obligation to the 8 families that I represent
Right.
in Emanuel is just as important.
Wow.
And I'm hugely disappointed that the courts did not go along with our request to be protected at that time.
Wow. Wendy Savage, it's always good talking to you. Thank you so much.
Quintin, good to see you.
Thank you.